Creation. The first day of creation, God created the time, light, the heavens, and the earth. Then God said, "Let there be light," and light began to shine. He saw the light, and he knew that it was good. The second day of creation, God created the sky and the seas. Then God said, "Let there be a space or firmament to separate the midst of the waters into two parts." The third day of creation, God created the land and the plants. Then God said, "Let the water under the sky be gathered together so that the dry land will appear." And it happened. The fourth day of creation, God created the sun, the moon, the stars, and the planets. Then God said, "Let there be light in the sky. These lights will separate the days from the nights." The fifth day of creation, God created the fish and the birds. Then God said, "Let the water be filled with many living things, and let there be birds to fly in the air over the earth." The sixth day of creation, God created animals on land and man. Then God said, "Let the earth produce many kinds of living things. Let there be many different kinds of animals." So God created animals, and also God created humans in his own image. He created them to be like himself. He created them male and female, as we know them today, Adam and Eve. And on the seventh day, he rested.
And on the sixth day, God created Adam and Eve. He placed Adam and Eve in the garden. They were responsible for the plants and the trees and the animals in the garden. They were allowed to eat from any tree except for the tree of knowledge and good and evil.
Now the serpent was more crafty than any of the animals that God had made. Eve was next to the tree, and she fell to the deception of the serpent. She later on gave to Adam, and he fell as well. This led into the fall of mankind. After the fall of man, Adam and Eve were kicked out of the garden. They went on to multiply, but sin was apparent in every one of their lives. As generations grew, sin became more and more real, and God was unhappy with how the earth was and the generations in it. So he told Noah that there was going to be a huge flood. And so he and his family built an ark, and all of the animals and his family gathered onto the ark in preparation for the flood. The flood was meant to wipe out the generations to start over. Then God blessed Noah and his sons, saying to them, "Be fruitful and increase in number and fill the earth."
These three were the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And from these the people of the whole earth were dispersed into nations. Abram, one of Shem's descendants, lived in the city of Ur. Tastes like salt, which stands for Sarah, Abram, Lot, and Terah. We traveled down the Tigris and Euphrates River, where they stopped in Haran, where Terah dies. Here we go. Here we have the Sea of Galilee. We have, this is the Jordan River. We have the Dead Sea, which is right here. We have the Persian Gulf, the Mediterranean Sea. Here in this area, we have Israel.
Abraham had two sons.
Ishmael and Isaac.
Isaac had two sons.
Esau and Jacob.
Jacob had 12 sons, which are known as the 12 tribes of Israel, as you can see displayed here.
The most important, which is Joseph. Joseph went down to Egypt.
He was sold into captivity by his brothers.
Joseph then prospered, became second in charge of all of Egypt. He brought in the Jews down into Egypt. This is where they spent 400 years in bondage.
God raised up Moses. He heard the cry of the people. He listened. He spoke to Moses through a tree that was immersed in fire but yet did not burn.
Moses said to the Pharaoh, "Let my people go."
And Pharaoh said, "No, no, no, no."
So God sent out 10 plagues in Egypt. The last one, which was the Passover.
What happened at the Passover?
The last plague, God sent out the angel of death to kill all of the firstborn in that area. But the angel of death passed over any door with blood over the doorpost.
Then they crossed the Red Sea with the Egyptians hot on their tail, chasing them down like a zebra like a cheetah chasing down a zebra. But they failed.
They did get away. They managed to make it to Mount Sinai. This is where God gave them the law through Moses.
After the law, the Levites and the priests, they also gave them the law, or the tabernacle. So where the Levites and priests gave offerings and feasts and counting faces. And here is where they get to Kadesh Barnea Oasis.
Is where Moses sent out 12 spies. Then the wanderers died here. They finally came to a place called Moab, where Moses gave the second law.
And then died. God raised up Joshua, who led the people across the Jordan River, and they arrived in Jericho, where they divided and conquered south and north, and they settled into 12 tribes. These right here are the 12 tribes.
And this brings us to the time of the judges, which lasted for
400 years.
400 years. And the three most important judges were
Deborah, Samson, and Gideon.
During the time of Judges, every man did which was right in his own eyes, except for
Ruth and Samuel, who brought about the United Kingdoms, which lasted for 120 years.
The first king was Saul, who had zero heart for God.
The second king was David, who had a whole heart for God.
And the third king, King Solomon, who had only half a heart for God.
King Solomon's death brought about the divided kingdom, which lasted for how much? Another 400 years.
The kingdom became divided.
North and south. Nine kings ruling dynasties for Israel and 2 for Judah.
19 kings overall for Judah, 20 kings for Israel.
All kings judged evil for Israel, and 8 kings judged for Judah.
That's right. During the divided kingdom, the prophets spoke, shape up or
Ship out. Then God raised up Assyria, who conquered Israel and scattered them. Then God raised up Babylonia, which conquered Judah.
And after Judah was conquered, they were sent into exile that lasted for 70 years.
That's crazy to me. That's a whole generation to know your life and be in bondage and know nothing except for being in bondage.
It's a long time.
Yes, it is.
But good thing, God raised up Persia, which allowed the Jews to return.
Finally home. Zerubbabel led the first return and rebuilt the temple.
Esther stayed in Persia and became queen.
Ezra led the second return and rebuilt the people.
Finally, we have Nehemiah, who led the third return and ultimately built the walls of Jericho. Rebuilt them.
After rebuilding the walls, there was 400 years of silence. And after 400 years, Christ was born. All right.